Stay right there! What are you waiting for? Kill him! Kill them both! No, wait a minute. Is it money you're after? I'll give you as much as you want.
May the saints forgive you, because I won't.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. This episode, I am joined by Jin The Ninja, Robbie Marks, and Ethan Indigo. Before we get into the guest, Jin, would you like to plug yourself and let all the new listeners know who you are, just in case they don't?
Sure. So thanks, boss. I'm always happy to be on with my fellow rejects, of course, Robbie and Ethan. And Nick also knows this, is that I'm a little nervous and very excited to be in conversation with Gordon. And so if people want to check me out, you can follow me on Twitter at Wukong Reborn, WUKONG Reborn, or you can follow the show account, Threshold Saints, also Apple and Spotify. My show is called Serial Experiments in Speculative Ontology. So we talk about magic, but it's more meta magic, meta reality, and meta fiction.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jin. And Robbie Marks.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is going to be a good one. I'm R Marks, or Robbie Marks. I do art for bands and festivals and various commission mom and pop stuff. You can check out all my stuff at my link tree, and that'll pull up my art, my podcast, all my miscellaneous extensions of all the stuff that I do.
Awesome. Thank you very much, sir. And last but not least, Ethan Indigo.
Peace. Honored to be here with you guys. And I am a writer, and I like to practice and share Tai Chi too. But I just completed an article that's on the Occult Research Institute website. So you can check that out there. And excited to be.
Thank you very much. Awesome. Thank you very much, Ethan. And thank you very much for adding to the site. I really appreciate that. And finally, to the guest himself, like I said, this is a huge thing for me. When I first got into practicing magic or even studying it, I started thinking, oh, there must be podcasts on this stuff as well, because I was already listening to podcasts about other things. And Rune Soup was one of the first I ever listened to and got new ideas, heard other people's, practices on magic. And even listen to him kind of go through his own ideas and changing through practices. And it's really mind blowing and amazing that we got Gordon from Rune Soup on the Occult Rejects. I can't be more excited. This is bizarre and wild. Thank you so much, Gordon. For the people out there that are listening to the show that unfortunately may not know who you are, can you please let them know what your deal is and what your show's about?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Gordon. I am the host of Rune Soup, which is a podcast and online magical training community, runesoup.com. I've lived all over the world. I'm currently based in Paraguay. I teach magic. I'm a lineage shamanic healer. And I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Awesome. I guess the first thing to ask is even what got you because now you've been doing this for about 10 years now, or very close to that, right?
No, longer.
Oh, really? Really? Okay, my bad. I
Yeah.
apologize. What even got you into doing this?
Well, I mean, we were kind of talking about this before the show started. It depends on, the length of time, the longer thing depends on the starting definition. So I had some very unusual childhood experiences that fall under what I guess we now call experiencer, to do with sleep paralysis and panic attacks and what appeared to be like screen memories, I suppose, for, I don't know, some kind of contact events and so on. So it's like if I start the story there, it's been since I was 4. But in terms of the intentional practice of magic, that began about the age of 13. And I just sort of sat bolt upright in bed one morning. It was a Saturday morning, and I was refereeing soccer at the time, which meant I was absolutely minted compared to my friends because it was good money, which was the only reason why I did it, because I hate soccer. And I'm like, oh, something weird happened. So I walked down the hill. We were about, I guess, in American terms, 2.5 miles, 3 miles from 2.5 miles from a really good independent bookstore. And so I bought a bunch of, I guess, very pastel covered Llewellyn books and a packet of cigarettes. And I went and sat in the grandstand of the local stadium. And that was the beginning of the learning journey. But something had happened in the dream space that made me go, all right, I'm going to buy some books on like Wicca and shit. And that was the beginning of the professional career, I suppose.
Oh, that's great. Llewellyn books. Some great books too, actually.
Hey, I can say it. I'm a Llewellyn author, so you know.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Chaos Protocols are Llewellyn. So obviously, most of my books are through Scarlet Imprint, but Chaos Protocols is a Llewellyn book.
Oh wow! If you don't mind, actually, real quick, do you want to just list off some of the things that you have written and that you've published too?
Sure. So the Chaos Protocols, which is through Llewellyn, and that's it's got chaos in the title because it kind of had to, but it's not a chaos magic book. My chaos magic book is called Pieces of 8. That's a self-published Kindle only one. And my main books are the Starships of Prehistory of the Spirits, and my most recent one, which is Animistic, are through Scarlet Imprint, as will the third book in that trilogy, in my Dot trilogy is what I'm calling it, which will be out through them when I finish writing it. Yeah.
Well, good for you, and good luck on that. Throughout podcasting, even like for you when you started podcasting, now I know you've had so many different people in the magical community that is, looked at as, they kind of have something to say or maybe listen to them, very well revered. And I was just wondering, due to that, has that influenced even your practicing or your understanding of magic throughout your, I guess, career of doing this?
Yes, in the sense of like a joke. It's a very gay joke, but the show is always like my song for the lonely. Like it's a, when I first started reading these books, like going back to spending my refereeing money on these books, I fairly quickly got to the Wiser Pete Carroll books. And I wondered, like, who is this man? Does he live in a tower? Like, what the hell is going on? Because when you're growing up in a faded coal mining town on the east coast of Australia, which in the 1890s was considered the worst place in the empire, you're reading about these people, and you're like, I don't have a frame of reference to people. And the show was for me as a kid listening on a bus, which is ironic actually now because podcasts are pretty solidly millennial. Like no one, I make the joke that it's kind of like the music in malls, like no one under 30 can actually even hear them. So that bit didn't quite work, but it was for this idea of people who live somewhere regional or remotely to turn these authors or these ideas that were very important to them into some kind of person, into some kind of relationship. And podcasts are great for that. They're really good for that intimate experience because they're generally an earpod situation, often in public or when you're in your domestic life, when you're cleaning and so on. So it's a really beautiful, intimate way of sharing information if you know that that's what you're doing. If you're just trying to like replace talkback radio, it's a dumpster fire. But if you take seriously, I'm actually just calling someone up in their home and finding out what sort of person they are, and someone else is listening to that in their skull, it's a really beautiful transmission medium. So in that sense, yes, in the sense of, it sounds wrong, but I'll say it this way. I'm less intimidated by fancy people now, but in a good way. Like I still respect their ideas and so on, but you don't trip over your feet or your tongue meeting them because you're aware of the opportunity that these kind of conversations have and that they can facilitate.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's great. Yeah. Okay. Now, throughout I know like one of the things I wanted to talk about too. Not saying that all your guests weren't great, but like which ones was it that maybe kind of impacted you the most that you think that you've had on so far, or was like some of the more exciting ones for you?
Oh, that's two different
Not to
questions.
put you on the spot. Sorry.
There's some slow burn. Yeah, there are some slow burns. Like when I think about Dr. Jeff Kripal or Mitch Horowitz or people who are, well, Mitch is in magic now, I guess, but like considers himself a believing historian. But their, let's say, normie work is so impactful, and the implications are so rich for the practice of magic that those are the slow burn ones that stick with you as you carry on with a magical career. You have Gary Luckman's in that camp as well, actually. So if you actually put together Gary and Mitch and Jeff Kripal, you have a invitation into the story of magic stretching back to the Hermetic Hellenistic era all the way up to now. And you have a horizontal way of framing the significance of that to alongside paranormal events and psi and so on, and people like Dr. Dean Radin, that kind of stuff. For actual magicians, very early on, it was really like the wild and woolly days, even before the podcast began, where I had a little Tascam recorder, and I had this strange experience when I moved to Bristol in the UK. I ended up, my apartment ended up, and I didn't know this at the time, overlooking where Pete Carroll's now closed place of business was. So like I shared an alleyway with where he worked for 35 years. And that's a really unusual kind of combination. I just emailed him and we had a chat in a pirate pub in Bristol. And it was just sort of like that. For context, I did a film degree majoring in documentary. So I was really excited at the idea of just having a recorder in front of people and having a conversation. Now it's ubiquitous, but at the time it was a little bit more adventurous. So the ones that were the most transformative or like big gets from a magical reputational perspective were early on, and a lot of them became friends. So I think about Jake Stratton Kent or Peter and Alkistis of Scarlet Imprint, who are my publishers. A lot of the English crew of that ilk were early on and really exciting. Like getting to meet Pete Carroll, having read his books when I was 13, was like, this is excellent. It's so good. I can't believe this somehow happened. But yeah, those are the ones. And some of them, like I said, well, Jake's now passed, but they ended up becoming friends when I was in London. But from a magical respect, influence perspective, it was that English crew, I guess.
Thank you. Did anybody else want to ask any questions before I keep going? All right.
I'll ask a question. I was wondering, maybe relative to your book, Pieces of Eight, could you break down eight? Kind of seems to be like a universal. The eight elements rather kind of seem like a universal concept among actually the divination practice, and maybe it relates to the nine with Odin being on the tree of 9 limbs for 9 days. Could you break down how the 8 might relate with the runic practices specifically and maybe universally too?
So the 8, this is another one of those questions that it depends how you want to define it, drastically changes it. So the chaos interested 8 comes from Pete Carroll, and it comes to Pete Carroll from the 8 Colors of Magic, which was a Terry Pratchett novel. So that's where he got it from. Now, and it's not like Terry Pratchett was a secret magician, quite the opposite. Unfortunately, he was like a dull loser atheist. But the association of 8 and magic he was more inspired, is my understanding anyway, of the significance of 8 in the Oriental, like Chinese, the significance of 8 in Chinese magic or mythology rather than anything runic. So that's the straight line. And I like pirates and always have. So that's the straight line from 8 to Pieces of 8. And in obviously, because the book is small, almost chapbook style, and the chapters themselves are small, I like the idea of it being 8. But the esoteric symbolism comes to that book via Pete Carroll, which comes from like a comedy novel for young adults, but it's sort of got in there from China. So it's not so much with the Nordic or runic stuff, which is there in like 90s chaos magic for sure. Used to make this joke that chaos magic is like Atlanta or something. Like you land there on your way somewhere else, and it seemed in the 90s that it was you either ended up in runes or some sort of tantra, and those were the where everyone kind of went in the 90s was chaos magic on their way to runes or tantra. It's a bit different now in the 21st century. I think because there's enough almost like epistemic and practice depth in chaos itself outside of the orders that people can spend a few years there. But nevertheless, I think of it as a fundamentally destructive and deconstructive modality by design. Its benefit and its flaw is that it kind of unpicks things. So it's actually a really good place to start because it can. Speaking of Dr. Jeff Kripal, he says if you want to be a like religious historian or some sort of comparative researcher working in that field, you have to lose two worlds. You have to lose the world that you came from, and you have to lose the world that you think is the solution for the world that you came from. So we were talking about that, but like you might have grown up a snake handler and said, well, this is all garbage. And then you have the 3 years Zen Buddhist phase and go, this is actually different garbage, but it's also kind of garbage. And when you get to the end of that second world, you're in a more open and, dare we say, wise place to onboard incomplete systems, or remain humble is a better way of saying it. Remain humble in the face of totalizing explanations.
I wondered, related to the 8, I know it, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing the Vejvasir.
I'm not sure, actually.
It's that 8 direction runic symbol, and it has the 8. It's the Wayfarer, sometimes termed. I was just wondering if that was something that you came across and looked into.
Oh, I'm familiar with it. It's just, but that's not where Pieces of 8 came from. And the runic stuff was attached. The runic stuff was attached afterwards, because also the sort of anus shape of the Chaos Star comes from Michael Moorcock, English fantasy novels as well. So any other 8s that could be applied have like retroactively stuck on, and that's definitely one of them. But it literally was a combination of a couple of British fantasy novelists put together, and then it's like, right, what can we do? What can we do to like magic up this 8 business? And it works. I mean, that one particularly, that kind of thing is quite evocative to. I like the Chinese stuff better, but that kind of runic overlap is very evocative, I think. And it kind of speaks to, this is coming back to how, where you lasso the question or the field of answer is like, okay, well, where did Moorcock get the idea of 8? The Pythagorean associations of it, the idea of 8 directions, because it's a doubling up of the 4 cardinal directions and so on. Like there's ways that it feeds into a novel to get into chaos magic, and that's always been interesting to me, like the Jungian imaginal approach to it, I guess.
I actually had a follow-up question for you, Gordon, on, it's not really related to 8s, but maybe I've heard you tell a story. I'm sure this for you is a long time ago, but you were a young boy in Chinatown and you went into a Chinese religious store and you purchased, I think it was the Guan Yu, the martial saint, but you didn't know who it was at that time. You just kind of knew that it would work for you. So it's kind of like you took a chaos magic approach to folk religion right away. And there's also something Kabbalistically interesting about that, is because it is kind of like a klipa. It is kind of like an aggregation, an outer clay vessel, but a literal one. So I wondered if you have reflected on sort of those beginnings in terms of where you've come to now, and like, what is the relationship? Because you're saying you prefer like the Chinese cosmology. And I totally agree with you. The Chinese cosmology for me is very interesting as well. I mean, I am half Chinese, so of course it would be of some interest. But sorry, I'll let you answer. But I just no, I want, if there's a way to sort of synthesize those early thinking with how you, where you're at now in your magical or spiritual.
Honestly, that's such a fantastic fucking question, because so there's a couple of places that I began my Chinese appropriation journey, and one of them is in Sydney's Chinatown. And the other one, because my mother used to have a Benetton store for a few years when I was a kid. And instead of buying in Italy for the store, you would buy Benetton Southern Hemisphere was run out of Hong Kong. So we'd go a couple of times a year to Hong Kong so she could do the clothing buying for the store. And so that's where I bought my first, if you're listening to this, I'm like giving extreme air quotes, crystal ball, a resin sphere, which nevertheless worked. But that's where I got my first like dagger and so on. But to answer your question, it's a weird kind of full circle, because the stuff you would buy in Chinatown in Sydney, because if you're unfamiliar with, like, Sydney's basically, it's like 30%, I don't know, 25, 30% Chinese now. Like, it's in the South Pacific. It's an Asian city. So it's got a huge, excellent Chinatown. And you go into these stores, these, whatever you want to call, they're actually usually called like Buddhist supply stores, and they're not super Buddhist. Like this is where the tiger mums come to buy the amulets for their feckless sons to make sure they get like good maths results. Like if you you go to the talisman wall, it's like, oh, you know who your market is. This is like mothers and grandmothers coming in to buy shit to like essentially traumatize their children into working as much as possible in school and music and so on. But what that actually shows is, and I sat with this because we included some I Ching training as part of the time magic course that I taught at the end of last year. When in a Chinese context, the I Ching is not considered magic. It's just the I Ching. And so are these amulets. Like, it's just the reality. You just do these things. We have magic is and I've always enjoyed the tension of this. Magic is like a culture-specific destination for things that we've rarely been allowed to do. And that's not where the rest of the world cuts the sandwich on the horizontal rather than diagonal. And that's the full circle for me, is that I was shopping in these stores where it wasn't even considered magic. It's just the thing you did. Like, it's like, oh, you need this charm, or this is what you do. And it's life ways. Like, it's actually being operating from your cosmovision. That's the full circle for me now, because it's not something I go and do. It's not something necessarily that requires the robes. And it's like in Paraguay here with friends, like the Kimbanda house I'm associated with and so on. This is the most Catholic country in South America. And the magic stuff is nevertheless normal. It's not overt like in Brazil or somewhere, in parts of Brazil anyway. But nevertheless, in every little part of Asuncion, you know the medico ñaná who knows the right herbal treatments. You know the guy to ask if you've lost something for him to tell you who stole it. And like real cunning folk stuff. That's not considered magic, because you don't do magic here, because it's super Catholic. And that's the full circle for me, is like I'm just back to it's life rather than magic, the doing of these things. And that's what I found and resonated with in Chinatown as a kid, was like I was going in looking for impossibly exotic magic, and there are literally mothers in there just buying talismans for their kids' math test, and there's no erotic charge to that like there was for me.
It becomes a practical thing.
It's just life. It's just like, oh, we need more rice. We're out of milk, and I need that talisman. Like, it's not, off to the Mind Body Spirit store to talk to some woman named Griselda about amethyst. Like, you just get it.
I kind of noticed that a little bit with like botanicals that was near me when I lived in different parts of New York. You'd walk in and there's, I don't know, like for some people it just looked like a normal way of life, and then you definitely saw like they had their section where it was just like for every, yeah, like exactly what you said. You're traumatizing your kids to try to get them to do whatever you want them to do.
Yeah. There was a lot of like studying and music talismans the last time I was in there. And I'm like, man, it just, way to live that cliche, like the little Chinese kid, the piano, looking at his friends playing outside of it. Good thing there's some good therapists in Sydney when they reach adulthood and have to, and like we all do, have to come to terms with our parents try to live through us. But it was kind of cute. Like the last time I was in there would have been about, I don't know, 8 years ago. And I'm like, oh shit. Like the weird way of saying it, but the middle classification of the Chinese community was, you could like archaeologically see it because of the change in what was available. But yeah, it's just normal life. People coming in to get stuff and then off they go because they were in town buying shoes, visiting the dentist, grabbing stuff. And there's a really beautiful and hard-won moment, from given that we come from cultures that Martin Prechtel would consider to not be intact, and we're still in them, to find for your own satisfaction a level of intactness with how you operate in the cosmos. So that's the full circle thing for me that I've been sitting with the last few months. It's like, oh, it's just life for me now, and that's really good.
Nice.
I totally agree with you, Gordon. And there was something that you said that I found very interesting about sort of the transaction that you made. There was like an eroticity, I think is the word you used. I would have used transgressivity, but maybe that's just my perspectival difference than you, because you're a little bit older than me and practicing a lot longer. So do you think that sort of, we'll say single pointedness, where you bring the ritual into your outer life, like where you're moving through time and space with the ritual intentions, but you're not doing magic. You're performing sort of the goals through your mind, you could say. And then to take the transgressivity away, do you think that is a useful sort of tool, or do you think that sort of initial implication, oh, I'm going to do something that's a little bit taboo, a little bit against normative society, do you think that is useful, or do you think that's more useful?
So I used erotic deliberately because it is that psychic pull, or that charge. The difference now, and this is where the transgression is, it's not that the charge isn't there, it's that it's located somewhere different. Because if I'm going in there to buy a love charm or a money charm, I'm erotically charged by a story of lack. And now, when I do ceremony or when I do magic, it is a process of widening out and opening up to the co-creative opportunity of which beings want to do this with me. That's where the erotic charge is a contact, not with lack, but with like a pregnant absence. So that's the subtle difference. Well, it's actually quite a large difference, but it's nevertheless an erotic charge. It's just that I'm no longer activated by the lack. I notice the charge. Like I don't like have everything I want. It's not that. It's that, oh, the story isn't one of like completeness is on the other side of solving a lack. It's more like what is this feeling, and to stay with it, to see what it alchemizes into in conjunction with the spirit team and the cosmos. So that's where ceremony is for me. Now that's what I do for shamanic healing clients and so on, is we locate with the spirit team what this charge is seeking to alchemize for, and we provide the container for it. Like magic is most successful when you get out of its way. And at the beginning, I was getting in its way. And when when you're 20, you have no money and you definitely don't have enough sex. It's like just I will back the car up, put all the amulets in, even the piano ones. You never know. But let's get done. And yeah, the difference between then and now is where that is where I locate the charge and what my reaction to it is. Not to solve it, but to what is the right container for this charge so it alchemizes. So that's the game now. That's the erotic play with the cosmos now.
I like that.
That's so fun. I noticed you're enjoying yerba mate. Is that am I right?
Saturday, but yes, yeah. They call it Saturday here. Yes, it's the same plant. This is
what wine?
This one is with mint and boldo.
Oh, I didn't know Saturday came in different flavors. I thought it was just.
Oh, here it's big business. There's like whole supermarket aisles of it. It comes with everything. But I think that the mint and the boldo one, and then boldo and limon is the my two favorites. So yes, you get used to it and you miss it when I'm not in Paraguay. I still buy it online, but by the time it gets there, it's obviously quite old, and you can tell the difference. And it's just the first thing I do whenever I come back is say, I'm going to get some chipa, which is like a local baked good, and turn it a for sure.
Something I wanted to ask you, kind of getting off onto like a different topic or question, really. And I figured I'd ask you because you've been around for a while, and I would assume like you've probably just regardless of having your show and what you do, you've probably paid attention just to social media or people anyway online. Throughout you doing your show, I mean, this is one of the reasons why I even did my podcast. Within the conspiracy community, I do think there is a huge misunderstanding of magic.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask, like, even in the magical, I will even say, even from, and again, I'm not being specific, but from when I was in the OTO and a lot more amongst other people practicing, I even thought then at some point maybe there was a big misunderstanding. But throughout this time that you've been doing all this and paying attention to just like even people's opinions and things online, is that your experience as well, where you do think like even within the magical community, and I'll even say the conspiracy community, a totally misunderstanding of magic and what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's getting worse. So,
Yeah.
like I just did an event with Greg Carlwood of the Higher Side Chats in Florida 3 weeks ago. And I wanted to, it was a live event, and my debrief of it is, I think, the most recent episode, depending on when this comes out, but you can find it there at runesoup.com. And I perceived a change in canon in conspiracy land from the 90s Lone Gunman, which is the X-Files spin-off idea of, it was originally trying to work out what's going on. Like, how did the world end up like this? Like, what was the formation of the intelligence world, and how did this happen? And what was NASA air cover for, and all this kind of stuff, to now is like space is fake. So it's like flat earth, mud flood, Tartaria stuff, and which I'm very cynical about for obvious reasons, but like that I view it anthropologically as, well, what is this change? And Greg and I kind of thrashed it out. And the pivot is from going from what is going on, like trying to solve it with some assumptions about how the world works in the 20th century, not being like, this is, it just, a materialism and a sort of scientism is taken for granted. And it was instead looking at like, well, what are the ancient alien ruins on Mars? And so rather than like, now we're at space is fake. Right. And the pivot is actually psychological, so that people have encountered the horror or the horrific reality that the universe isn't as advertised. Not like the world, not like the government is lying to me, but that the cosmos isn't as advertised. And there are a lot of people's psychological reaction to that is to fall back into easy and familiar answers. And so underneath things like the flat earth and so on is essentially a biblical literalism. And this is why I think the conspiracy land was never a super fan of magic, because the people who end up in conspiracy land very often are from some like unpleasant church backgrounds. So, and then they have this confused idea of, especially when you begin conspiracy land, it's like, oh, there's the Freemasons and they're the Illuminati, and they're also the same, but I also don't like the Pope, but they're against each other. But like, and it's just like everyone you don't like is just put into this same queer, commie, Jew, Illuminati, papist.
Oh, I've said that before, that this dude makes more money than me because, he's on TV. He must have fucked up.
The Illuminati, if you don't like the Pope, the Illuminati are the good guys. Like they were pro women, they were pro free education, they were pro women's voting, and they were like a secret society agitating to transform Europe around these like anti-Catholic ideals. So like, are they the bad guys if you don't like the Pope? Like, it's just dumb, right? Yeah. But unfortunately, there's always been a deep suspicion, like if you do magic, it's like, oh, you must have, like, I guess you do spirit cooking on Epstein's Island. And I'm like, well, I didn't get the invite. So they're like, what? And that's disappointing. Although that being said,
so like you don't eat babies for Sunday dinner. Is that what you're saying, Gordon?
No, I'm vegan. So
see, then there you go. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, he doesn't eat people.
I make them out of pitan, which is a beautifully named word. But so the weird thing about that is it will still work for people. So having said that, I want you to visualize like the Robert Anton Wilson idea of the Chapel Perilous above it. So I came to magic first and then conspiracy. Some people actually go the other way. And Greg will sometimes email me when people will, there's been about 5 times that over the last 10 or so years we've been friends, where he'll just forward me an email going, "Hi, Greg, thanks for everything. But because of your show, I found Gordon and Rune Soup. And so I'm no longer a Plus member and I've joined Rune Soup and I'm learning magic, but thanks for everything." So I've cost him exactly like 5 clients, but or 5 Plus members. But the point is more that people end up in that very Robert Anton Wilsonian sense of the Chapel Perilous of what is my relation to the cosmos in general. Like the power stories that are unfurling around us are themselves contained within some, we inevitably have to form metaphysical and ontological frameworks to contain the power stories unfurling around us. So you stack, and as long as you can maintain some form of sanity insofar as any of us are sane, you're in a Chapel Perilous moment permanently there. Like you can come into that chapel through the road of, or the hallway of magic, or the hallway of conspiracy. But once you're in there, you have to contend with all of that and everything else, psi results and spontaneous healings and all the rest of it. That all has to be held in that center chapel. And if you do it right, dare I say, it doesn't matter too much which hallway into the center of that chapel you came down, as long as you can keep your sanity. And a lot of people on both sides don't. So in conspiracy, in Magic Land, it's because people are so, they psychologically are so, let me say that differently. The psychological need that the identity of magician holds for them is so important to the maintenance of their psychic integrity, that they can't handle the idea, which is nevertheless true, like that MK Ultra stuff and whatever. There is some bad shit that went on the, and still does, that went on the edge of magic. And they're like, no. And it's like, no, because I'm some, fancy OTO Thelemite. And you see people's shadow reactions, whether they come to, whether it's conspiracy people looking at magic or magic people looking at conspiracy, because to entertain the idea that people in power acting in their own interest, at least even if they're acting in yours, requires someone who has that idea of being a magician as very important to them. That's existential to that identity, because it means that you don't actually know how the cosmos works. So there's blame all around on those sides, and really the only thing you can do is find your own way into the Chapel Perilous and try and remain sane.
Right. I was just going to bring up Robert Anton Wilson. I pretty much, in my early teens was reading Burroughs and Robert Anton Wilson and getting into Discordianism and I think that chaos, like you were saying, basically teaches you to pick things apart, and it gives you a rounder ability to be able to look at everything more holistically.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I also think it's a personality type. So there was a moment about 10 years ago, I was still in London, and my best friend was getting married, and I was the best man of this wedding event. So I was in charge of the stag weekend, and we booked out this hotel. I booked out a whole pub on the South Bank. So we had this whole pub to ourselves, and we were on the roof taking these essentially LSA tablets that I'd got in Soho. Yeah. So it was sort of like LSD, but with a huge body high that no one else enjoyed. Because it's a really intense body high, and we were drunk.
Give you a headache too, yeah. And
I loved it. I'd never felt so regulated in my life, and it was just like Lovecraftian, whirling, and I just felt so at home and at peace in the chaos of it. I'm like, wow, I wonder if I could. But this is before microdosing. It's just like, I wonder if I can just like take these every day.
Right.
Because something about this horrifying Lovecraftian body high was like normalizing for me. And I'm not saying that to be mental. I'm saying that there's like some people find, and I think people like biologists suit this, like the piece of the chaos. Like my happy place is the middle of the Amazon, and it's so loud and so busy and so just everything going on around you, and you just relax.
Brings peace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you had mentioned before, from my experience, I was actually into conspiracies before I got into the occult. It was conspiracies that brought me to the occult, and I got very interested in that. And then just, eventually I look to see if there was any like orders or places near me that I could get into. And like I had mentioned before, I ended up being in the OTO for a bit. And I even remember at times there, like I didn't bring it up much because like you'd already hear like other people have conversations when you're like sitting there waiting to go in the temple. But like I was kind of surprised, to be totally honest with you, like how it was a thing there that I thought was weird, that like nobody, they all thought like the idea that anybody of importance or even people we don't even know who they are that might be into this stuff and have an impact on the world, that just can't happen. Like that's silliness. And I was just like, but like, yo, I'm walking into the temple with you and I'm going to be in the Gnostic Mass. I'm not saying we're bad. I'm just trying to get at, like, you don't want to admit that this might be an option for some people? Like, come
When
on.
you listen to some of the actual saints in the Gnostic Mass, it's like they were doing the stuff it's talking about. So in the lineage of the OTO, you have spy magicians and so on. It's just, but this is a personality type thing. If the people who are attracted to and thrive in an order system thrive with a narrative of total explanation. Like, this is how these things work. Learn this and you know how they work. This is the appeal of Orthodox Christianity now. Like they have beautiful, totalizing, inspiring, rich explanations. That's horrifying to me. I would much rather be out in the jungle. But it's really interesting to watch that. People go, oh, no, that can't happen. It's like, I can tell you personally it does. Like you just bump up against it everywhere in London when she reaches a certain level. Like that's just wrong. And it's historically, factually incorrect. It has been for the second half of the 20th century, but you're picking at people's very, very important ego identity. So you're like instantiating their shadow for them at that point, which is that not only are they not special, they don't know everything. And it's vice versa. Like that's just the game of it. So I kind of released all that a long time ago because it's a personality type. You can't, it's like trying to get your accountant to have fun. It's like, this is not gonna, it's the wrong tree.
Yeah. Before I ask my next question, that might take a little bit. Did anybody want to ask him anything before I go?
Forgive me for cutting out there when I asked you about your mate. I find it's very intuitive herb or tea.
Oh, absolutely. Oof.
And
Absolutely.
it turns out it's related to the holly plant. And I'm just wondering if you could just, I believe it is a holly, which of course is related to.
Well, it's a shrub. So yeah, I guess it would be. Hey, like at least you go far enough. I noticed, so it's for people who are unfamiliar, it's actually really caffeinated. Like it's up there with coffee. So I need to remember that because I like coffee in the morning. But if it's a day like this, that's desk work based, I love having the Terere there, and I just make sure I moderate the morning coffee so you're not too caffeinated. But the reason I'm mentioning that is that it absolutely hits different from a plant ally perspective. And it's for the Guarani, so like the native people of a decent chunk of Paraguay and going out in that direction towards the coast in Brazil, it's like a master plant. So it's like funnily enough, speaking of holly, it's like an all heal master plant that is used in conjunction with other parts of their herb lore. So Medico Ñaná is like that's the Guarani term for what Ñaná is. Medico is obviously Spanish, but Ñaná is plant spirit. So Medico Ñaná is like plant spirit doctor, right? And it's the old grandmother at the market who knows what combination of things to do. And there's a whole language of terere and its use medicinally, but also insofar as this is different culturally. And I find that the creative, the gentle creative co-pilot that it offers to long work sessions, if it's writing or planning a course or something, is really, really good. And it's just, when you hear Paraguay, I think it's the second or third poorest country in South America. So they don't have a lot of money. And that's one reason why they just kind of like sitting under trees, drinking terere. And it's also kind of fucking awesome. It's really hot here. And it's just awesome to just sit there silently, just with this plant and your thoughts and the world. And it's not psychoactive or anything. I mean, technically it is because it's got caffeine in it, but it's recommended. I tell you what, it's a recommended plan, and you open the implications or the doors of it in combination, because it's like, to be a master plan is one that's like teaching and useful in combinations. And there's all these saint lore around it. So the way you work it here is that you'll put the herb in the huampa. This is called a huampa. And you fill it up about a third of the way, and then you put the water in, and then you say St. Thomas drinks first. Because it obviously, the plant absorbs some water and it sort of comes down, and you wait a couple of minutes and then you put additional water in and go there. But the whole ceremony of it is to offer St. Thomas the first drink. So there's this huge, like, I love it. I love the whole, the language of it. And it's interesting to be able to find how that's universal. We did comparison wrong in the 19th century, obviously. In the 21st century, it's and I use Tyson Yunkaporta for this. In the 19th century, we were looking for the products of thought and comparing them. So the example would be you looking around the world for other cultures that have a plant that they offer to St. Thomas, and you don't find it. But if you look for the way of thinking, you find it everywhere, which is the inclusion of a lineage of beings, including plant beings, into the ceremony of incorporation. That's a universal. So it's really fun being in the particular of like a Paraguayan plant milieu and understanding its universality at the right level. But it's also just delicious and as you say, like a really good creative co-pilot.
I'm so glad that I asked that. That was a beautiful story on yerba and bringing it into the universalist kind of perception there. That's awesome.
Did you want to ask something else, or anybody else want to ask something?
I have a quick one, if it's okay.
Go.
Okay. So, Gordon, that was really great. Do you have? I know you've had shows on your show, Rune Soup, in the past about sorceress saints and like Saint Cyprian, of course, and then there's the Skinless Saint from Portugal. I've listened to all those shows probably several times, but I was wondering if there is any particular saint lore in Paraguay that you're currently interested in, maybe aside.
That's a great question. If you're after, well, St. Thomas is one of them, but if you're after like the more intense ones, so there is there's a Santo Muerte here rather than a Santa Muerte, who is a Jesuit priest who was down in the south near Encarnacion, and he was murdered by spear by some of the locals. I think they were wearing and buried, and they could hear him laughing afterwards. And so there's a Santo Muerte saint tradition here that's I've been around, at least for now, as part of, because it's the Kimbanda stuff is obviously an import from Brazil, but it's hit the same kind of magical communities here. So there's there's a BVM, Our Lady of Cacupe, which is one of my favorite forms of the BVM here. So that's like the main cathedral in what's outside of Asuncion, and she's a plant spirit. So there is the story of this BVM is another native, wasn't Guarani, it's another tribe, I can't remember, was fleeing from people who were trying to kill him, and he hid behind a tree, and they saw him when the tree enveloped him and kept him there, and that was the BVM, and that log is still like in the cathedral. So they're the patron mother, I guess, of Paraguay is a native tree spirit. Like when you speak the language of these things, you're like, oh, awesome. Like the patron BVM of Paraguay is a Paraguayan tree spirit, and they have annual pilgrimages out to the cathedral for. It's one of the Marian feasts. It's one of the December Marian feasts, but it's really cool. So there's a bunch of that stuff here, and they also have, for people in the more cryptid conspiracy land, they essentially have their own Bigfoot up country in the jungle. So they have like a hairy ape man style cryptid being as well. So there's all kinds of cool stuff. It's really great.
Nice.
I just wanted to point out, since you brought up so much herb lore, Gordon, it was that Paraguay is one of the only countries, I'm sure you know this, that has the Guarani Jesuit herbals still intact that survived various Dominican book burnings or whatever that was. that's really interesting to me, because then you're also talking about like grammars of the herbs, like the ways they go together. Because I heard you say boldo. Well, I'm very familiar with that herb. And like, so I would understand that in maybe a magical or maybe a folk herbal context. And maybe that, even though I've never been to Paraguay, don't know that much about it, but maybe there is a way that I could sort of put it together, make that grammar kind of make sense from an outside perspective. Do you think that
You
am I on
definitely
something?
could.
Or not? Okay.
No. You definitely could. You just have to find the level. When you do comparison, you have to find the level at which things are comparable without being diminished. And that was the 19th century era. So we used the products of thought, ways of thinking example earlier. And you also have to find your legitimate way in. And not in like a identity politics, like you have to stand back and let other people talk sense, but more like, okay, so you have contained within your life and your body an understanding of the plant kingdom from a historical and herbal perspective. I come at it these days anyway, more from a shamanic, plant agentic, or plant ally, plant companion. So I'm interested in the fact that you're familiar with boldo. I'm interested in that from the boldo perspective, because it's really interesting to be somewhere like Manila and see dried boldo on the shelves. So you're a long way from, I mean, I'm a long way from home, but you're a long way from home, my little friend. But I can get it fresh at the supermarket on the corner, obviously. And I'm really interested in the agentic combinations because underneath your question is this notion of, well, what is my legitimate access to this information? And too often, this is coming back to how I do magic now, too often we assume that the human agency is the only one involved. And the most important thing you can do to level up your magic is to widen out that agency. Bayo Kamalafe talks about that with politics of post-activism and so on, which is like, to be in this world in 2025, to be not post-human exactly, but where we are in this moment, is to recognize that human agency isn't the only agency going on. And so there's an initial sense making and relating that begins to it. So that's my answer to you. It's like, how am I in relation with these beings and thought beings in a way that is fruitful and beneficial for us both? So yes, absolutely. There's legitimate fun ways in that don't require you to have to do like, I don't know, like a biomed degree and spend 5 years in the Chaco, like embedded in a native community. No, there's like that'd be amazing. But there are find the level that you are legitimately in relation to these beings that we're talking about. And that's for me how I do comparison. It's like, what is the thing, where can I stand true so that I'm not, you don't fall into the shadow projection trap we were talking about with different magicians and so on. And it also means everyone's different. It opens up like, what am I to Boldo and what is Boldo to me? And I love that. I love the polyvalence that comes from, I guess, that animist approach to magic.
Thank you. I did want to ask. I did want to ask you this. I mean, you're just saying stuff that made me think of like 3 other questions, but I kind of do want to go back to this original idea that I had in my head to talk about. It kind of goes a little bit more again with going back to maybe like misconceptions, but I think it's more a little bit more misunderstood in the conspiracy community. From your understanding and from your, I guess, practices or whatever you've done throughout your career, what is chaos magic to you?
It's almost like that Atlanta idea. So chaos magic is permanent epistemological and ontological humility in practice. So that's very, very good, and it's very, very bad. It's very, very good because it means you don't end up with you get less of the demented ego inflation that you sometimes get more in that OTO Thelema area. So that's good, but by the same token, the hyperfixation on practical results above all else is philosophically naive, because that prioritizes the physical, which doesn't even really exist anyway, right? So it's immensely powerful, but flawed. Like Glenn Close, I don't know. Like it's that's what chaos magic is for me. It's like an epistemic humility that will trip you up differently to something like Thelema, I guess. But it's for me, it's been very powerful. But I was able to solve the Pete Carroll in particular's prioritization of the material by moving in an animist, monist direction and allowing for results to or outcomes is better than results. Shifting from results to outcomes is maybe even how I would say it, so that the outcomes of ceremony are unpredictable and can involve well, at the very least, they involve the imaginal. They also might involve, I don't know, a pay rise. But for me, that's chaos magic. It's a epistemic ontological humility put into practice.
Sorry, Nick, I have a follow-up for you, Gordon. You were one of the first people, I think, to really discuss this idea of like animism, regional animism, and maybe this practice of geo-relational ontology as with the spirits that you live with, local spirits that you live with, like understanding who they are and what they are and what they can receive or what they would like to receive, et cetera, et cetera. So to go back to this question, maybe that is, do you think that that is what the draw towards this kind of animism is for you? You're saying you want to put the ontology or the ontological practice, the praxis into the world, so that would mean that you have a reciprocal relationship. Is that correct? Am I sort of thinking about things in that way? Or?
Like I know what you. Yeah, it makes it sound more intentional than it was. I know what you're getting, but it's. I found this is why I wrote animistic. I found two things in the term animism. The first is a sense of like, oh, this is actually how I've experienced the cosmos since I was a kid. And I think it is the most philosophically valid home base for 2025. That's the first part of it. And the second part was that the charge is still there around this term, which it's part of that 19th century category error, because animism is a term that white people used for brown people when describing their primitive theory of mind. The idea that they couldn't tell the difference between dreams and awake and trees and dreams. And like the ultimate plot twist in that is like, that was the 19th century Europeans era. Like they got their philosophy of mind was the most naive ever conceived of, which was that it basically doesn't exist except for brain chemistry. So there's still charge around, for me, around actually using the term animism with the understanding that it's a charged term. When I was writing the book, I was in the State Library in Sydney in New South Wales. And was talking to one of the Aboriginal curators there, and he said, "What are you writing about?" I said, "This." And he said, "Animism." He's like, "Why?" It's a really good poet. Like, we don't use that term. And I'm like, I know, that's actually why I'm writing the book. That's like, we don't use that term. I'm like, yeah, but it's still in the field. Like, I'm not using it for you. I'm sitting in it until it no longer has charge. And he's like, "Oh, okay." Like that's the dual thing for me, is that in this term, I found how I experience the cosmos as a community of beings, and have since I was a kid. And if people are honest, they're like, "Oh yeah, I can pretty much agree." Like, you might be a dual aspect monist. You might be, I don't even really care, right? But it's how I experience the cosmos, and it's a place for me to currently situate that still has fruitful charge. So that's why. And I think both of them are, especially the first bit, has been very validating over the last decade or so for other people in Magic Land to be like, yeah, this is oversimplifying, but when you look across the 20th century, magic and astrology had to hide in psychology, which was fine because psychology was pretty fucking metal at the beginning, like at the Jung level. Well, a third of the way through, like with Jung and so on. But then there was this 70-year period that, corresponded to peak American modernist capitalist confidence, where it had to be personality tests and so the 21st century was about finding how we, because that jars with the experience, and we can be grateful for them for like carrying the fire over the mountain to where we are. But animism allows that horizontal comparison, which has been a big part of the Grimoire revival and the Scarlet Imprint project and so on, is to be able to horizontally look at European magical traditions in the context of non-European magical traditions, and not to appropriate but to be like, oh, okay, actually we all have stuff like this. And it's that we all have stuff like this level of magic that's very validating and fruitful, because it's still yielding connections and outcomes. So that's my long answer to what I knew. What you're kind of getting there. Like, I knew what you meant with it, but animism is half me and half the cosmos's community of beings, and it's still doing its work. We won't use the term in 50 years' time. Like, this isn't a solve. This is an alchemization of some stuff that it's funny, like you look back in time and go, oh, well, maybe we should not have, quote unquote, we should not have done 19th century stuff, 100%. But by the same token, if we hadn't, we wouldn't be alchemizing it now. And maybe it alchemizes into something that is necessary in 150 years' time. My shamanic healing teacher, Dr. Alberto Violdo, his Kero teachers said that about the conquest. So actually about the arrival of the Spanish that like destroyed Peru and South America. But like, they said, well, maybe even this disaster I'm using my term for alchemize, but even this disaster is ultimately alchemizing towards greater outcomes. And if that hadn't happened, the greater outcomes wouldn't have. And we're still in that alchemizing moment of decharging, but expressing and alchemizing the charge of the 19th century eras, I think, in theories of mind and politics and so on. And they're still playing out in really fruitful ways in the right hands in magic.
Thank you, Gordon. Sorry, Nick. My last one, I promise. So thank you for clarifying my sort of amalgamated question. And yes, that was a perfect answer for it. And I wanted to sort of follow up with the idea that I detect a futurist kind of tone in what you're saying, like a sort of like you're saying that there's potentiality here, there's possibility. Let's look to the future. I'm with you on that. I'm like, let's not be stuck in, Tradlar, but also let's like pay homage to like what came before and understand the relationality between the systems. I think that's it. But are you saying, Gordon, that there's a futurist element to magic, or perhaps a meta political implication to what you're doing?
So I just taught a 6-month course on time magic, and the future is also, so yes, except I guess I would bring a bit of trouble to the definition of the future. But so let me say it differently. The goal of the Rune Soup project is, I joke with the premium members, is they're all compost, because I want the West, whatever, to have a more intact magical culture for the kids that are drawn to it in 2100. And there's a lot of stuff that we need to alchemize before that. And it's not about knowing like, oh, we should put some time capsules in place so that they know to learn these things about fucking chakras or archangels or whatever. No. You authentically relate to our lineage, because it's funny, like how do we contain and become custodians for ancestry and tradition in a way that isn't LARPing? Because the LARPing comes from that psychological need that I mentioned before, like the belongingness. I have a podcast episode about a month or so ago called "You're Not Ready Till You're Ready" when it comes to magic. And part of that is the squeamishness amongst, let's say, lodge magicians around the so-called New Age. It's hilarious to me because Crowley's book 4 is the New Age. It's fucking yoga postures. and chakras and I Ching and shit. Like it's all the worst mind, body, spirit stuff. But the people who find that now have the psychological need of like, oh, I'm doing real magic. I'm like, it has to look like some drawing room at Lancaster Gate in the 1890s. And that's an improper way, I think, of containing and being custodian for lineage and tradition. And we're still thrashing that out. And part of that is being present rather than looking in the future and so on. It's we birth that future by represencing rather than the whole 19th century. Like my frustration with the Lodge approach from the 1890s, let's say, is that like, oh, we'll bundle up the world's information and we'll grid it. And you start here, like an 1800s factory. And then you move here. And once you're here, you know everything about how the cosmos works. And like, so the cosmos is fixed. And that's, speaking of Chinese, it's very un-Chinese. The cosmos isn't complete. The cosmos is working things out. It's flowing. So that's a powerful shift that the West, so-called, isn't good at. A call to represencing. And it doesn't mean we all just go and become like Taoist alchemists, right? It means part of the process of presencing is like, well, how do we move into a healthier relationship with time as a community of beings? And that's like what I have to say I agree with you that there is part of this project. And it's, for me, it's permaculture. I'm a permaculture designer as well. Like your job is soil. Everything else the cosmos does. And it's kind of like that. Fix the fucking soil, and if you leave it for a few hundred years, you will have like a peak old growth forest. Because that's just what the cosmos does. Like you don't need to know, oh, we'll put this oak tree here, and we'll put this one here. And like, no. Like outsource to the divine intelligence, that kind of stuff. And where in magic, we're not good at that because we come to it to solve or fill those psychological gaps, those psychological needs. Like, oh, I need to be smart. I need the tree over there. Like, do you? Where does that need come from? Let's use magic to explore what that's trying to do. So yes, there's definitely a futurist component to it, but only if I can say it in that long and animist way of poetry.
That was great.
It reminds me, as you described that, it kind of reminds me of Wu Wei in magic practice. You are integrating the Wu Wei idea into your practice, and I wonder if you could talk on that. And also another personal question: besides your drinking of yerba, maybe you have some Tai Chi or Qigong practices that you utilize. You want to share?
Not so much. So for my shamanic healing lineage, there is it's a 3 energy center Andean system, but also in a clinical setting, it's a chakra system. So there's definitely energy work and body work and dietary requirements on days before. I don't drink that much anymore anyway, but like there's no drinking before client days, and this is why I'm plant-based and all the rest of it. So there's an energetic component to it. But so speaking of Don Alberto, his teachers would say like your principal role is to open sacred space and get out of the way. And I have an angel course as part of the premium membership as well. Then if you think about jumping up to the level of what is a universal about angel magic, going from Enoch through D, through the Heptameron to Doreen Virtue, like what is the universal here? And the universal is the calling in. The universal is it is part of the human relation to the cosmos, the charge to pray for. Don Alberto says like he's big on he ran a brain lab like at the age of 25 at Berkeley and whatever. So he's a medical anthropologist who's very interested in dietary change. And when people ask him like, what's the single best immediate dietary intervention you can make? And he says, bless your food. So that's my answer to the Wu Wei thing is we don't need to incorporate East Asian versions of something that's actually, it's there in an angelic tradition. Like your job is to because this is the universe, a relational universe is essentially governed on something kind of like consent, which is the aspect of God that is you calls the aspect of God that isn't you as part of that completion of creation. And that's what I mean by outsourcing divine intelligence. And we're not good at that. We're not good at that because it doesn't fit with the post-enlightenment materialist capitalist cosmology of a fixed universe with quantifiable known things that humans can know because no one else in the cosmos has mind. So that's how it is for me from a opening up perspective. Now, energetically, yes. The thing is, and I know this from having clients, the shamanic healing clients, I'd love to be able to say there are some universals like, oh, you need to be doing, everyone needs to eat this way. Everyone needs to take these herbs or do these breathing exercises. It's a universe where that is true is not a universe in flow that's working things out. It's a universe that has universal categories. This is what a human requires to human. And that's not been my experience so far in it. So like we can kind of say, and even this, you think about, you could technically think of examples to the counter, like, oh, everyone needs body movement. And this is true, like body movement, adequate nutrition, adequate water. But what that looks like for people is different on every level. And that's where we kind of like, yeah, that's the universal. It's like, okay, can you recommend a specific energetic exercise to everyone? Not really. Like it's really interesting. Like it's new. It's new to work out the limits of what you can say. And it doesn't mean you don't say anything. It means you say the right kind of universal thing. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's it reminds me too, as you're speaking, it's almost like the grammar, logic, rhetoric phase of magic, where you have to have your understanding of the soil, and then things more easily are communicated and understood.
Yeah. And that's contained in the grimoire tradition. The grimoire tradition is a tradition of discovery, right? So instead of inheriting a UFO, like a flying saucer, you get the blueprints to build one. The grimoire is just plugging a phone in and getting a phone call. And in the Andean traditions, when you get given the rights, they're given to you as seeds that grow. Because there's this notion of amaru. And that's how, if you think, like most people know this, but some of the despacho offerings, like llama fetuses and so on, are designed when they're buried so that llama grows in the spirit world, right? So it's this idea of the most magical traditions are contact events. That's the soil, right? So you need to know how to plug the phone in, but then it's up to you. And that's the bit that I think we're quite squeamish about those next steps. One, because not that many people do it, but two, you end up, we dismiss it as UPG, and that's not quite right. This is what happened when I picked up the phone. You should see what happened when you picked up the phone. We're not good at asserting the reality. We're not good at asserting realities unless we make them universal, and that's not what you find outside of the West. Like the primacy of dreams and the understanding that people's so-called inner or imaginal experiences are totally ontologically valid, but related to them. We struggle with that. We struggle with the idea of personal means delusion, like UPG, and it's like, that's not it. But by the same token, the spirit contact I have has no bearing on your spirit contact. And that's something that I hope we alchemize over the next decade or so. Like, what does it look like when we, quote unquote, in the West, return to a more Shipibo understanding of spirits and dream experiences and signs and portents and all of that? Because there's a ontology to it that they have that looks like what I think we're missing. And I don't mean we learn it from them. I mean, like, we just need to open that sacred space and get out of the way and see how it looks for us to have that return. This is kind of that everyone's compost to me because I don't know what that looks like. But I know we have to do that for the kids of 2100, I guess.
It's very interesting too. You remarked on kind of the collective consciousness and so forth, and to what you're saying now. Isn't it funny how many people are presenting the ideal diet that everyone should be on, whether it's steak and eggs or some other thing? But it's like, that might work for you, but that definitely does not work for any number of people, let alone everyone.
And the truth claims on both sides rely on us having an accurate view of history, which is also wrong. So like the more carnivore side of things, like this is how our ancestors ate. And like you're doing a materialist time thing for a start. And second of all, like that's delusional because like it's ahistorical to say that. And also they were not eating cows that were 80% saturated fat. Similarly, the same thing on the plant-based side. It's like this gambit relies on us finally getting history correct and our view of history being accurate. I'm not going to play that game. I don't think that's right. And instead, it's like, how do you, we have healing systems that are like this, right? So we have them in indigenous contexts, even to some extent in Chinese contexts where diagnosis isn't really used. The practitioner treats the patient, not a symptom or a name for a process that the body's going through in response to certain environmental conditions. And we have a whole book of them. Alberto says that. Like in the West, we have 1,800 diseases. In the Andes or in the Amazon, there's one. Like, are you in relation or are you out of relation? And that's the universal, and it hits different for every person.
Thank you. Something I did want to bring up. It was just something that you had said about Book 4 and Crowley and the New Age. Do you think he might have even influenced that more with his connection to Gerald Gardner in Wicca?
Sure. I mean, you can do like lineages of where that stuff shows up, and obviously, so Peter Gray's done the Scientology line, right? So it goes Crowley, Jack Parsons, Scientology and Wicca were his most expensive, most successful rather outcomes, right? Like the OTO to some extent is we can use a Elon Musk term, like a bootloader, right? And so assessing Crowley's impact, it's coming back to that idea of like, well, what are you measuring? This is history. History is a game of, history by definition is materialist. Like you need material culture and text, and you need to be able to make connections between text, but that's not how reality works. So you can look at Scientology is in the process of failing, but it had a pretty good run and had a lot of money and a pretty wild run, and it wouldn't exist were it not for like Crowley being upstream from it. And this is to your point earlier about conspiracies getting all this stuff wrong. It's like, that makes it blah, 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 I don't know, satanic or child killing or whatever. It's like, no, that's not a flow model. That's not how like thought beings are in relation to us, in relation to time. And so, yeah, I mean, he has that kind of influence, but it's always been really funny to me that if you break down the material in the lodge system, it's angels. So Enochian. It's chakras and yoga. It's tarot cards. Like, what? It's just story and virtue. This is mind, body, spirit. And I don't mean that disparagingly. I was in her, I know she went crazy and moved to Hawaii or whatever, but I was in her first graduating course. So I'm not even, like, my point is the opposite, which is that all these people who think this stuff is metal, it's like, what are you talking about? He had neo-pagan gods and angels and chakras and yoga. What? Like, that's my mom's friends. What's happening here? And that's to bring the invitation, like, oh, if that hits something and he was like, oh, that annoys me. It's like, okay, why does that annoy me? It's like, oh, because I need it to be different, because I need to feel like a super special magician that's different to what all the other people are doing. Why do you need that? Oh, well, because like in childhood, like that's the invitation to go in. That's actually the work. Like, that's why I say to people, like, it's not just to be irritating. Well, it is. It's literally to be irritating, but it's tactically irritating. Like, what about this irritates you? Go and find that, because that's the thing that's calling to be alchemized.
Very well said. Very well said right there. I do even think I think people doing that, what you said right there, is actually a misconception with magic, where I don't even think a lot of people even realize that that's what some magicians are actually doing.
It's what I was doing. I mean, I
taking a
started
look
when
at
I was a
themselves.
kid, like 100%. I was there, like I was really, it took me, like, I was so into the identity of being like a 90s chaos magician as a kid that I thought that was a source of my difference. And it took me to like 17 to work out, oh, fuck, I'm gay. God damn it. Like, I had girlfriends and shit. I thought like being interested in guys was this cool, like chaos magic, fucking, you know, I don't do category thing. And my ex-girlfriend's like, no, that's not it. I'm like, oh shit. Like, I was into it. It was a really important part of my identity building to find specialness in chaos magic rather than Thelema or whatever, but it doesn't matter. It's just a different brand. It was super important to me for a long time. And I honor that. And that's what I mean. That's why the actual podcast episode is called You're Not Ready Till You're Ready. It's not to call people wrong. And I wasn't wrong. I was just in the process of healing something. Like, it's not a right and wrong decision. That was absolutely the right identity formation to adopt for the conditions that I was in. And that's how that's the real Gabor Mate thing. Like, when he looks at people who are homeless on the street, heroin addicts in like Montreal in the winter, he's like, if I lived your life, I would be in the exact same situation. Like, you've lived a life where that's the good option. That's actually how like the Eater and the Shadow works. So I think I wanted to share that with people, because I'm not saying people are erroneous when they have been called to magic, at least in part because there is a necessary structural medicine in that story. But there's another story that we continue that story and turn it into something I promise is so much better.
Thank you. Something I did want to ask, I know we're already kind of getting close to an hour and a half. Just like real quick from your experiences, again, I really did love the answer that you gave before for chaos magic. Now, I just wanted to give maybe people an idea. If somebody wanted to consider themselves a chaos magician, or they're kind of into that stuff, what would be normal practices of a chaos magician? Like, what would be stuff that'd be part of their daily routine and ritual work?
So there would have been things that they've tried. So chaos magic is a scar from falling off your bike, because it's like, oh, I would have kicked it. I did some of Pete Carroll's stuff from his earlier books that he's low-key repudiated. I had to play around with the Pseudonomicon. And so I've read Robert Anton Wilson, and I've read The Invisibles. And that's it. Like, it's actually the stuff you've done rather than the stuff that you're doing. With the possible exception, and we say possible, if we were to find a single universal in the regular practice, or the non-dropped rather than regular practice of a chaos magician, it would probably be some form of sigil magic. But other than that, there's no specific. You've kicked the tires on a bunch of gods. You kick the tires on a bunch of different. I actually don't think anyone. I think chaos magic as a history over its 40 or so years is also its version of a grade system, because you start off with Pete Carroll's 1980s books, and then you kind of move into a 90s era. Then you move into, I mean, fair enough, the Pseudonomicon's the 70s, but like Necronomicon, Invisibles, that's a 90s moment. And then you kind of move out of that into how you apply that to Western magic with things like grimoires and angels. And then you're sort of out. And somewhere in there, you probably read your Bob Wilson in between Pete Carroll and the 90s moment. But the actual story of chaos magic is kind of its grade system, because the people who still like use the term, or a better way of saying that is the people who still find use in the term, because I find use in the term. Like I said, that if people call me a chaos magician, I don't really care, but like I find use in the term. that's what I think. I think you've done some stuff rather than there's a collection of practices that that look like cruising altitude for chaos magic. The only thing that would be up there would be maybe if you're going to do practical enchantment, you would at least consider sigils. That's probably it.
I could almost maybe say from my experience, and I mean, not that I would ever say I was really a chaos magician, but I could see how, I worked with sigils a lot. And I think it was at that point when I got to that, it was because of me being into other stuff that I kind of got into that, in that direction. I think almost kind of like how you even said with like, Thelema, chaos magic, kind of a different brand. For me, I think it was even with the sigil work, like kind of like taking my own ideas, putting it together, and then like how Thelema, in my opinion, it lets you grasp so many different areas to still pull from and put together. So I think it was like due to all of that experience, I found myself like kind of maybe, I guess, a chaos magician for a minute. I was into servitors and
I was experiment in college.
Do you think servitors and egregores would be something considered that a chaos magician would play with?
I think you'd have a moment with them, like coming out of Pete Carroll into the 90s. I think you've kicked the tires on it. I find them very unsatisfying, because, well, I have lineage spirits. I have a spirit team now. Like, why would I not talk to like my actual spirits rather than me? It almost seems rude. It's Jamaican. So I think you've had a moment with it, and I understand the logic of how it ended up in chaos magic as an experimental moment. But even like Phil Hines, like they've all repudiated, they've all well and truly left behind this stuff. Like it's 30 and 40 years old. They're old, proper old now, right? So this is what I mean by I think you go through it, and like chaos magic's lodge system is going like accidentally chronologically, it just kind of unfolds. You find your early Pete Carroll, and then you sort of finish it with later Pete Carroll, which doesn't have the same charge, but is more reflective of his contemporary thinking. But like, it's a good point. Like Thelema allows you to do that as well. So you do Liber Resh, and then you activate some sigils. Are you doing chaos magic or are you doing Thelema? What? Like, it's kind of different brands, and that's chaos magic's beautiful at being interoperable in that way. It's coming back to that open sacred space and get out of the way. Sigil magic itself, when you feel called to up the ceremonial complexity, that's typically when you're ready to go and find something else. Because it's like, okay, well, I could just do a sigil on the bus, probably not the masturbation one, but I could do a sigil on the bus. No, I got some candles. I got the house to myself tonight. What do I want to do? This is coming back to that co-creation. Like, how do I want this to work? Do I want this to be angelic? Like, what day is it? It's Friday. It's Venus. Like, you start to go horizontally out, and I love that. That's what's really good about it. So, but are you doing at that point? What are you doing? If it's hour of Venus, day of Venus, activating sigils, am I doing astrological magic just because or am I doing sigil magic? I don't know.
I was the same way with the sigils and everything. And again, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so you have you were saying earlier how you identified with the chaos magic and took that on as an identity, and you're playing with and kicking the tires within these various, formats of sigil magic, Enochian philosophy. And is there a point where you ascend above all of this identity type magical process and move more into a higher form of universal mysticism, basically?
I don't think you ascend, and I don't think it's higher. Jung would suggest it's further down, but it's more like losing those two worlds again. Chaos magic is really, really good if you're an adolescent and then in your 20s. Like, I was living all over the world and like having, not with his budget, but having like Grant Morrison adventures, and it was great. Then you encounter something that can't be contained by this is the flaw in Wilsonian thinking, like Bob Wilson, that is. Like, then you encounter something that can't be contained by the like, or maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe I guess I'll never fucking know. It's like, no, that was real. Like that's different. There's a you lose the confidence that you're smart enough to know that this stuff is all we'll never really know, low key made up. You know, that's that you lose that chaos magic world if you do enough chaos magic to have a result that's like, oh fuck.
And then you have gnosis.
Yeah, exactly. Which is in the system. Like it's there. And secondarily, I would say, just speaking of Jung, I think you just age into it. So the first half of life is the egoic outward expression. Famously, he would not take clients until they were in their 40s because they weren't interesting to him until then, right? Because it's in his era anyway. Like by the time you're 40, you've raised your kids, you've had your career, like man or woman, like the kids are out of the house, and the second half of life is like my dreams and what the hell am I? Yeah.
Yes.
So you actually just grow into it. You grow out of what you do. Actually, this is when you picture in your head people who are the profoundly antisocial, pathetic personalities that ruin magical community. Those are the people who've hit the second half of life, but are still operating as if they're in the first half of life because of like the trauma stuff, like it's whether it's narcissism or lack or what have you, they're still operating from this first half of life scarcity thing. They haven't made the inward turn. So I think if you're just aware of it, it happens. Like it happens. Magic will blow up chaos magic for you. And I write about that in Chaos Protocols. Like it's a feature, not a bug, but it'll like that will happen. And then there's the second half of life moment. And it doesn't mean like, oh, I've reached tremendous success and I have all the money I need and the house is paid off. It's not that exactly. It's actually just the inward turn happens when you've had enough adulting. You've had 2 decades of the cut and thrust. And it doesn't mean you retire. It means like, this isn't all there is. Like I'm actually more interesting and my life is more interesting. What's going on there? Like we're following those dreams, following that imaginal expression. So it's not ascending or higher. It's just unfolding. Yeah, it's just like how a tree reaches maturity, I guess.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense. The natural expression of the function of manifestation and growth itself. Yeah.
And you if you were fortunate enough to have an incarnation that gets you into that second half of life, that's what happens. So that's how the Mayans considered once you'd been on Earth for, 52 years to do the full Tolkien calendar, you were considered complete.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you die.
Yeah. I just started.
It doesn't mean you die. It just means like the tree has reached maturity and you just carry on treeing until you actually do leave. Like the unpacking of the soul or the spirit into the body and life completes at that point, and then you're just that until you leave. And it's that same, it's not exactly that, but it's that same natural, attending to the natural unfolding of what it is to be a human that has an incarnation that goes this long.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions?
I have one here. I got a last one. So I'm friends with a student of Austin Kopak, who I know you'd had on your show, obviously. He relates a story from 2019 where he made you an electional talisman and during the bushfires, I guess. And he extols your skill in talisman or sigil making, sigil making. And I wondered if you could share anything that you I'm sure you teach a course on it and all about it and write about it extensively, but if you could share something that you think is useful in sigil making, that would be, I really like that.
So there's a whole bunch of free videos on my YouTube channel now about this. And the thing, and some recent ones from about December, because I've kind of done a series on what we've been talking about, like when you hit a moment that let's say in your 20s, you'd be like, I'm going to do some love magic to get that chick. It's like, well, why that specific chick? Like we can also say, you should just like love yourself and radiate love and you'll like, sure. But why that specific one? Like, what does your life look like with her in it? that's the actual target. Like, oh, my parents would hate this bitch, and that's what I really want. So, okay, cool. So, or I would finally get approval from my parents because she's super hot and is also Indian. Like, oh, so actually it's not about her. The target is like, I am called to sit with lack of approval or more, or like emotional distancing from parents, right? So the key to sigil magic is to actually find the thing that's looking to come into the universe through you, because it's always the next layer down. It's always like, oh, I need a sigil so that Kathy at work falls in love with me. It's like, okay, appreciate how wildly specific that is, and let's get down to what I call the miracle layer underneath it and activate that, because that might happen, by the way. But I guarantee that the thing that's trying to come through you will not happen, even if you manage to successfully do that. So that's there's no, people want, and it's just fascinating to me. People think that the increase in magical efficacy comes through technical excellence. It's like, oh, my sigils didn't come off. I must be using the wrong paint pen. It's not that. Right? Like, beyond a certain basic level of having a stylus or an implement to put a mark on something else, you have completed the technical part of making a sigil. So if they're not working at that point, don't be like, oh, I guess I should have a different colored paper. Like, you're just spinning and spinning and spinning because, like, oh, Kathy still doesn't love me. I'll try red paper tomorrow. Like, girl, that's not going to be it. And that's the only reason why I even bother talking about it anymore, because it brings people who are cracked open, ready to look at a particular trauma, to my door. Because the stuff that people will just like message on YouTube, which I don't look at, by the way, like, or Telegram or whatever, they'll show up going like, oh, I really need this to happen. And say, okay, this is going to be a good discussion, but it's not going to go where you think it's going to. You think it's going to go. It's going to go where it needs to. And sigils are really good for that. Sigils are really good for that because they are iterative and admit minimal self-delusion. And that's their consistent power. But I think your friend might be talking about the Vasuki operation where we summoned a water dragon. That was wild. That was good. That's in the whole story of that's in Animistic. That was, very impressive.
Story.
Yeah. Very impressive operation. Saved the fun. So,
This reminds me of a really simple, intuitive, and in psyche investigative process that I learned. And I believe you're elaborating, but just in its most simple, you can ask when you find that one specific girl or that thing that maybe you want or that maybe you're afraid of, you can alternatively ask yourself repeatedly, what's the best that could happen? And then again, what's the best that could happen? And for the things that you have fear of, well, what's the worst that could happen? And keep going with that line of questioning, and it really can bring up some insightful
I like a via negativa for that. I do, what am I upset about? So like, let's say it's Kathy at work. What am I upset about? Oh, I'm not in a relationship with Kathy. What about that makes me upset? And you dig down layer after layer until you get to, I'm not in a relationship with someone that my parents would like, and so I do not have parental approval. It's like, we found it. Thanks, Kathy. And then by then, it's who cares, right? But it's the same. It's like via negativa, but it's the same.
Said. Very well said.
Yeah, dropping underneath. What is this? What is this? What does my life look like with Kathy? It's like my parents would kick us out halfway through Thanksgiving, and it would just be my happiest moment. And it's like, okay, do you think we should look there? And that's it for me.
That was amazing. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I think unless anybody's got questions, I'm good, and I think we can wrap it up there, in my opinion. Real quick, just so everybody remembers, the people who are listening, Ethan, just let everybody know where they can find your stuff again.
That was so fun, Gordon. Thank you so much for the inspiration and insight. Ethan Indigo, I'm on all the social media. Please feel free to reach out. And of course, on Occult Research Institute. Thanks again.
Of course, thank you. Robbie Marks.
Yeah, thanks for the perspective in regard to all the different angles to be able to look at everything. Yeah, if anybody wants to check out my stuff, my art, my podcast, anything, just go to my link tree at R Marks.
And Jin.
So let me just say thank you to Gordon, thank you to Robbie, Ethan, obviously the boss, Mr. 33. So you can listen to my show, Threshold Saints, if you're interested, and you can follow me on Insta or Twitter, Threshold Saints, and at Wukong Reborn WUKONG. Obviously, we'll have my link tree in the show notes. And I just wanted to say that I loved how Gordon kind of wove in this idea of chronopoesis through narrating pseudo chronology of chaos magic and how one would perceive it, approach it, and recognize what is in it. The different stages, kind of. I thought that was very interesting. So thank you guys, and yeah, this was amazing. One of my favorite shows.
Thank you very much, Jin. And yeah, that is something I would like to add. I was really glad, Gordon, what you did explain about chaos magic, and even what you mentioned about the sigils and how deep you can take that. That was something that I had started noticing, that it is like, well, why am I even looking for this? What is it filling that I'm looking what am I lacking that I'm looking to fulfill this with? That is very deep, and I think people don't realize that, maybe it doesn't sound edgy, or it doesn't involve it's child sacrifice. That maybe magicians don't do that stuff, but we do.
What that means is the thing they want more is to be seen as edgy, and that's where you drop in. Like, there's no dodging it. Like, if people are like, oh, that doesn't sound edgy enough, I'm like, okay, cool. So you came to me for a love spell, and what we actually want is a specialness spell, right? Like, oh, that doesn't sound edgy. Like, there's no way. It's a finger trap. If you come to me with what you think is your desire, we will surface it with 1 or 2 questions, and then we'll drop down to that miracle layer, and you'll never look back. Magic can do that. Magic that's what it's for. It's just this glorious, miraculous unfolding of shit that you didn't even know. Oh, damn, I didn't even know that's what it was. And I love that.
Yeah.
We've all been through it. Well, I had to that's not cool. Like, shadow work, awesome. That's what we're at. Is it? It's like, oh, hang on, why is that upsetting to me? And it's the edginess thing. Oh, why do I need to be special? But you want to be special according to who? Or do you want this glorious unfolding of your incarnation into the cosmos? It's like, oh yeah, fair, good point. Carrying on. I love it. I love that you can't. It's a I don't know, like an escape room or something, and you walk in and say, ah, damn it, I came in for one thing and it's completely different on the way out.
Yeah. Oh, multiple times that's happened to me.
Yes.
Gordon, please let everybody know where they can find all your amazing stuff.
Runesoup.com, Runesoup on Substack. It's all completely free. That's probably the best place to get all the free material. But if you want to join the membership, that's runesoup.com. And yeah, Runesoup on YouTube.
And does your website have all your books and stuff available, or is that somewhere else?
And you can find them there. But who's going to go to a website to find book? Go to Amazon. You know where you go.
All right, yeah, there you go. Go look him up on Amazon. I'll try to grab some of his stuff and I'll throw his links down there. But thank you again, Gordon. It was a great talk. It was nice to have somebody else on the show that has been practicing and studying for a long time. It was a wealth of knowledge, and I'm really glad the listeners got to hear it. And thank you all, Jin, Robbie, and Ethan, for joining me. Again, it was an amazing episode, and I appreciate it. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.